going to go ahead and get things kicked off with a conversation with the Executive Program Manager from Toyota, Sheldon Brown. Come on out, Sheldon.
How you doing?
Good morning.
Pleasure to see you.
Have a seat, please.
Well, thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, great.
So we've got a beautiful RAV4 EV sitting out at the front of our show floor right when you walk in.
Yes, thank you very much.
Now that is the second generation RAV4 EV. The first one actually was back in the late 90s, right?
That's right. It ran from 1997 to about 2003. We sold about 1,500 of them, and we had just a tremendous following. The folks who engaged with the product felt that it was something special, and so we were excited to sort of relive that vehicle and sort of pay homage to it and bring out the next generation a few years later.
It's kind of interesting. The Prius also launched in 1997, and since then, millions of those have been sold. Only 1,500 of the RAV4s. Why do you think there was such a difference in sales and the adoption rate of those two?
Well, you know, if you think about the Prius, though, the Prius evolution has been a long time coming. You know, it's been out in the market well over 10 years now. I think with the hybrid sector, we're only at about 3% of the market share. So it's something of a building of the technology and people getting accustomed to it. The Prius was something, though, that allowed people, it's sort of a gateway vehicle, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have to completely, not rely on gasoline anymore. Whereas, you know, on the electric vehicle, it's sort of a mind change. You have to think slightly different about how you're going to drive those vehicles and how that vehicle meets your needs.
From an engineering standpoint, though, it almost seems like developing an EV would be easier than a hybrid, no? Because you've only got one powertrain to worry about?
Well, there's different, certainly there are some complexities when you start to have multiple powertrains, and the EV does eliminate that aspect of it. But there's other challenges as well. You know, we have to start to think about things. We don't have engines that produce heat, and now we have to come up with ways to manufacture heat in vehicles and things of that nature. So small issues, but important ones if you're going to be driving the car in multiple different climates.
Is that perhaps why they're only sold in California at this point?
Well, right now I think California was a targeted market to understand how the vehicle was going to perform. Certainly the environment is very conducive to EVs here in California, both Northern and Southern California. But we thought of it more as a good test bed. There's a tremendous awareness in California compared to the rest of the country, and there's an appetite for it here, to be perfectly honest. So we wanted to start with something that was slow, that we could scale and build, make sure that we could get the proper momentum. And anytime you introduce a new technology, you also have to think about the implications of supporting that technology. Sure. And so to make sure that the dealer networks are able to make sure, you know, when you have an issue or a problem, that people can, go and have reliable service. And so that's something that we need to build and scale and roll out at a more, paced measure.
Now, we're going to be doing a Q&A with Sheldon here at the end of this session, so if you're here or watching online, please go ahead and send us tweets with the hashtags Toyota and ExpandSoff. Send your questions this way, and we'll go ahead and I'll share some of the best ones. Cool. And now, so this is the second generation. I think it was 97 to 2003, the first generation was made. Mm-hmm. And that was largely developed in Japan, but the second generation is much more of a U.S. product, in terms of design.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was styled here right in North America, and we obviously partnered with Tesla Motors, which most folks who are familiar with the vehicle know. We utilized the Tesla technology in the powertrain, and then we integrated it into our vehicle. That integration was all took place here in North America with Toyota Technical Center, in our offices in LA and in Ann Arbor.
What was the origin of the partnership with Tesla? How did that come to be?
You know, it's actually a really interesting story, and I don't know all the nuances of it, but somehow Elon and Akio got together and decided that they were going to build cars, and they thought
Toyota.
Akio Toyota, yeah. Mm-hmm. And they thought that this would be a great opportunity. So this is really, came from the very highest level. They made an agreement to work together. A couple days later, we got tapped on the shoulder. Akio said, "We'd like this to be done in North America." So go book a flight to San Francisco. You're going to be meeting with the Tesla executives to decide what car we're going to build. So it was pretty quick and pretty interesting.
If you had to develop a car, there are certainly worse places to hang out than in San Francisco.
I have to promise you, this is definitely one of the better locations. I don't know about it.
A little better than Detroit, perhaps. Now, yeah. You mentioned that Tesla provided the powertrain. Can you give me some more details on that? Is that something that is evolved from some of Tesla's existing powertrains?
Yeah, so what we looked at, we saw that there was going to be some synergies in both from a volumization standpoint of view and some using some common components between our vehicle and the Model S. So we tried to use the basic architecture of the components that were going into at the time, what was going to be, the next generation, or the new Model S, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so we looked to work with them. We provided our specifications on how the vehicle needed to perform and how the components had to interface with our systems. And then Tesla was responsible for architecting, that system to meet our requirements. So at the end, we use their motor, their AC induction motor and inverter, the battery, a DC-DC converter, and a charger.
Is that motor and powertrain related to either the Roadster or the Model S from Tesla?
It's actually very similar to the pedigree that's in the Model S.
Okay. So can we expect the same kind of performance then?
Certainly, I think that's one of the great things about this vehicle is it has that sort of Tesla DNA, that really punchy power and feel to it. And our chief engineer, Greg Burness, when he thought about the vision of this car, he wanted it to be sporty. And there sort of seemed like there was this, I would say, misconception out there about EVs, that they're sort of slow and dodgy and really not that exciting. And Tesla was really the one organization out there sort of with the Roadster who had made a contrary point to that. And he was very insistent that we take that sort of DNA and make it fun to drive and really show that the EV powertrain is a viable powertrain and it's a really fun driving experience.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at how many think that EVs are inherently boring to drive, even though a lot of the early EVs are fairly slow. Even so, they're still kind of interesting to drive because it becomes almost a game of trying to see how much range you can get out of the car. And it's definitely a different way of driving. It's definitely a different challenge. It's almost like playing a video game for me.
For sure, and I think a lot of our customers say the same thing. You think about the drive experience slightly differently. People talk about the EV grin, and that's something that is really a difference in just the amount of torque that's available. And that's something that's really hard for people to understand until you get into the vehicle. I mean, you're talking about 273 pound-feet of torque at 0 RPM. I mean, you press the gas and it's ready to go. And so while the horsepower numbers sound low, the actual performance, this particular vehicle in its sport mode will do a big SUV or a small SUV, but pretty heavy vehicle, 0 to 60 in about 6.8 seconds. So it's fast.
Now you mentioned the weight of the vehicle. This is also available as a non-EV, of course. What's the weight difference between the gasoline model and the battery model?
Well, we added about 860 pounds with the battery itself, but we were able to offset that through some mass savings in other areas. So the total vehicle mass went up about 470 pounds.
Okay, and so the weight's what, around 4,200, 4,600 pounds?
Yeah, just around 4,000. Yeah.
4,000. Okay, great. And you mentioned 4.6 seconds, or excuse me, 6.8 seconds 0 to 60, which is great for an SUV. What kind of range can you get out of the car estimated?
So range is actually a pretty interesting conversation. Right now we have an EPA-rated range of 103 miles. Our target was what we like to call a real-world range of 100 miles. And that was really to think about all the different driving conditions, the different climates that we hope to sell this vehicle in. So in the extended charge mode, we actually do about 113 miles by the EPA rating, and 92 in the standard charge mode. So because we have the two modes, EPA regulation requires that we blend those, and that's where we take the average, and that's where we get that 103.
And that refers to basically charging the pack to different levels, which can ultimately be a little bit damaging to the pack. Can you explain the difference between those two charging modes?
Sure. Well, we looked at our vehicle, and we have a 41.8 kilowatt-hour battery, which is a fairly large battery for the size. And we have ranges that are far greater than what we see the standard daily commute. And we sort of saw this vehicle as being something as a second vehicle for families and largely for a commuter type purpose. So we thought that most people aren't going to need that extended range every day. And certainly one of the things that helps you, reduce the amount of capacity loss over time is maintaining lower states of charge, especially when you're storing at higher temperatures and things of that nature. So it's one of many factors, but we wanted to give folks that opportunity to be able to be judicious about battery life and give them the ability to do that. And so that's why we made the two different charge modes.
Now, in terms of charge time, about how long does it take to recharge the car from empty?
From a zero state of charge to the normal full, which is about 80%, 35 kilowatts, it's about 4 to 5 hours, and then it's about 5 to 6 if you go all the way up to the 41.8, and that's assuming that you're using a 240 outlet with the 40 amp charger. So that was something unique to this vehicle. We have a 10 kilowatt charger on board, which is, because of the large battery, we wanted to give folks the ability to put a lot of energy in there quickly.
Does the car support DC fast charging?
This one does not. At the time when we were developing this, we were sort of late to the game in the sense that we only had about 24 months from the time that we had made the partnership to the time that we wanted to be to market for the.
Which isn't much time at all to develop a new car.
No, it's in vehicle terms, that's extraordinarily fast. And so when we decided at that time, there was a lot of discussion as to what would be the next format. Since that time, the SAE combined J1772 format has been approved. We chose to avoid that sort of conflict at the time, and that's part of the reason why we decided to go with a much larger onboard charger than most of our competitors.
Was there any talk about perhaps supporting Tesla's standard? They've got the supercharger standards now that freeze in the Model S.
We did. We had conversations back and forth. Ultimately, like I said, I think the SAE standard is where we landed on that. But certainly the Tesla format, absent the J1772 standard was something that I think they, with their battery format size, I think DC quick charging becomes a lot more compelling for them as well. So.
Is that something that they might have been willing to share with you, or is that something that Tesla, do you think, would really want to keep for themselves?
I don't know the answer to that question. We didn't really get into the nitty-gritty business details, but I found in our partnership, it's been very collaborative, and I think both groups have been willing to share and license technology, fairly. So I'm sure if we had expressed a serious interest in it, I'm certain they would have at least, in good faith, considered it.
Now, this is an SUV, so you'd imagine people maybe taking the thing off-road or doing some towing. Are you still able to tow with this vehicle?
On the vehicle, actually, we don't recommend towing because of the motor and the heat issues. We have the capacity, of course, to support different loads at different temperatures. Most of those loads, though, are because of the extra mass that the vehicle is carried. Those are mostly in the area of passenger and cargo. So we don't recommend towing with the vehicle.
Yep. And what sort of modifications have been made to the vehicle to make it work as an EV versus a gasoline-powered car?
Well, actually, it's pretty extensive. This vehicle was more than just a compliance vehicle in the sense of throwing stuff together. We really wanted to integrate it and make sure that every aspect was considered and refined. We had to do a lot of things. A lot of changes to the exterior panels to improve the aero performance. Okay. We've achieved a 0.30 coefficient of drag, which is the lowest in any SUV class in the world right now.
Yeah, for a big car, that's great.
Yeah, and it's absolutely huge when you start talking about how that impacts miles per gallon, and also how it impacts range, especially on the freeway. In addition to that, we had to completely rethink the thermal management system. Obviously now we have 2 different radiators in there. We have a system that heats and cools the battery so that this vehicle can be used practically in many different climates. And of course, we have to bring heating into the cabin. So that was another big, important thing. You lose the ICE, you lose that source of heat. It's a wasteful source of heat, but in this case, we had to come up with ways to do that. So there was a lot of things that had to go into that. And then of course, you start thinking even further beyond that. You start regenerative braking, the ability to recapture that. So all of that had to be reintegrated into the system, and then reintegrated with the Tesla system. So that was where the challenge lied in making these 2 unique, well-developed systems somehow come together and meet.
Now, you mentioned this, you're envisioning this as a second car for a lot of families.
Yeah.
How far do you think we are from an EV being a practical only car or primary car for a family?
Well, certainly, I think, you'll see with the Model S out there right now, they are making the challenge out there, or the notion that this can be your primary vehicle. It supports a pretty large battery and has the ability for quick charging and home fast charging. So I don't think it's too far down the road. It really depends on your need. A lot of folks, especially when you start coming out here like to the West Coast, you realize that people are sort of accustomed to mass transportation and things of that nature, where the EV is very similar to that. I think of the EV driver as a little bit more of a pilot than a driver. You have to think a little bit about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Sure. When you really start to pay attention to your range, you also start to recognize just how much you actually do drive, and I think most people in their mind drive a lot further than they expect. There's lots of solutions for ways when you have to take that occasional long trip. So again, as the technology becomes more robust, I see it becoming more and more popular.
And Toyota is, of course, at the forefront of pushing hybrids into the market. You guys have been a little bit slow to really bring EVs to the mass market. Do you see Toyota really being a major player in EVs going forward?
Well, I think right now we sort of view ourselves as a mobility solution provider. And right now the market speaks to different technologies that have a number of different benefits depending on the user need. So we see our position as to make sure that we provide a full array. And to my knowledge, we're one of, if not the only, we're one of few that provide a complete array: fuel cell, plug-in hybrid, hybrid electric, and full battery electric vehicles. So again, we want to make sure that there is a technology out there that allow the customers and the users to decide what's best for their basic needs.
I have a couple questions here. Jonathan is asking whether Toyota will be investing in charging stations to help encourage adoption.
So we are collaborating with a number of the local utilities, as well as I know with the California government. I don't have any of the details, to be perfectly honest with you, on what we're doing specifically on that sector, but we are certainly engaged both with that and also with the hydrogen fuel cell development within California.
Don is asking if you have any thoughts about the New York Times versus the Tesla debacle that went down a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I'll let that sort of lay where it will. Obviously, I certainly have been in Elon's position before and can understand when you feel like you're not getting a fair rap. But on the end, I think that that sort of played itself out. And the folks that have driven the Tesla S, they know what it can do and what it can't do.
It can do a lot of things. Jeff asks, do you see the Bay Area as a potential manufacturing site?
Well, we certainly were familiar with the Fremont facility that we had here, and certainly enjoyed the years we spent here in the Bay Area. Obviously, right now we are working with Tesla, and actually Tesla has purchased that portion of that location.
It's an interesting kind of cyclical thing now that Toyota's basically, or that Tesla's now building cars in the former Toyota factory.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of neat to go back there. You kind of go home and see what they've done, and they've actually done great things there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
It looks fantastic. Yeah. So I don't know of any immediate plans in the near future, but certainly with our partnership, there's always an opportunity.
And final question. A question about whether you're working on any sort of open APIs for developers to be able to write apps for your EVs or anything like that at this point?
Presently, that's actually a really great question, and we're looking at the business opportunities for that, and where especially with the N-Tunes and the interface.
Yeah.
So we have a whole other organization that deals with that, and they could probably speak to that a little bit better than I can. I'm more of the vehicle engineering side, but certainly something that we consider.
All right, Sheldon, thanks very much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.